This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
Are there any questions? Try and wake up after lunch. Victoria, did you look as if you wanted to ask? No.
Searching my brain. Not
okay. Okay, maybe. Well, I'll have to make some observations then. It looks as if you're putting me on the spot, all of you, by not raising your arms. Well, I could start maybe with something that is very strong and links, in my opinion, the Cast text and the Girard text. And that is the family as a performance. I think that it's very strong in both texts. In the first one, as Jill told us, there is an observer, the speaking eye in the text that observes a family cycling to a park. So it's a public space and there is a performance of family, the ideal family, which the narrator is actually exposing as a performance. Okay. In the other one, as Roberta says, we have here that what comes through very strongly is the norm. And the force of the norm, that is something that is impossible to depart from. Because Fanny doesn't know where she fits. And so the only way to express her sgomento, what's the Italian? I don't know why I get Italian into this, because I normally speak in English about these things. Her, kind of feeling she doesn't know how to handle what she is, and she's been forced to face that by the conversation there, because they're asking, what is the role of this man who's given the sperm? You're not saying he's not a father, he's not a donor, he's a friend. But what does it mean that he's a friend and given the sperm? What will he actually? He's a stud. Interestingly, we found that word, and we will see that it recurs in Eleonora's text later on. So the norm is there, hidden, as the stone against which all these other things have to be measured. Lacking in the absence of models, then we have the only thing we have there is the norm, and we have to try and do something with it. So what Roberta was saying, as in relation to the ending of the novel, is that we have to create these models. So there is actually, it is a very positive thing, because we have actually a field there once to act on. So it will be hard to move away from the norms, but we know that they are at work and that we've got to do something to break them and create new things. Having said this, I think that the Cuevas text also works against norms in the way we analyze the text. I thought that there wasn't a lot in that text, actually, and I was very pleased that I was shifted to that text from Eleonora, who wanted to be in my group, but actually it was very interesting, because we did manage to discover, by trying to answer the question, is this really a literary text? And we saw that there were lots and lots of narrative strategies at work there. The text was inviting us to take a position, and it looked as if it was a biography, but in fact it was much more than that. And we were taken by the hand towards the end of this text, looking at how this woman is expropriated of everything. While she is a mother, while she's pregnant, she has to look after herself. She has to eat, because otherwise she'll be killing her child. And here there is the resonance of what the jailers would be telling her and forcing her to do. As soon as the child is weaned, then the child is taken away. So she loses this identity as mother that they had imposed on her, And she becomes then a political activist who, however, in prison is not recognized as a political activist because the category of political prisoner did not apply to women. So the text actually is taking us through this peeling off of identities, of layers of identification that this woman will have, and then she dies. Also, we find that there is a romantic, the text is attempting to draw us into some kind of romantic idea of motherhood, sanctity, the sacredness of motherhood, both from the jailers who respect her life, so to say, it's very, very hard to qualify how they respect her life while she's pregnant, and then they don't any longer. But also there's this lovely image in the book about her being shot and the bullet being lodged in her stomach, and they discover that this bullet stays there. And miraculously she lives. They're not telling us how could she survive as a bullet in her stomach, which was never removed, and they discover at the same time she's pregnant. So there is this kind of, I saw that there is some kind of attempt to also look at motherhood as something quite miraculous.
Divine.
And divine, perhaps. But maybe I'm reading too much into it. So, now we've got questions. Good. I can stop talking. Thank you, Victoria. I knew that I would have this effect. When I start talking, people say, don't want to hear anymore.
I just wanted to... there's an interesting image as well in the text. I was also in the group looking at the female political prisoners. And just towards the end, there is, it's only a couple of lines, but there's a kind of defence of the political mother, where she's been kind of castigated for abandoning her children, but then she says, I can't remember what the line is, Holly, you could probably help here, but she's basically saying her interpretation of being a good mother is actually to be politically active and, in whatever particular way that
Maybe
is.
you want to read it, it's very interesting.
Yeah, so it says they reproached her for having abandoned her children in order to live a life of politics, but she said that when the party ordered something, she did it thinking of the welfare of her children. And so we had quite an interesting discussion about, in a way, that the ideal of a good mother is often, almost to kind of rein in your focus and hone in on kind of quite immediate needs of the children and to kind of ignore wider contexts, broader issues. Whereas here there's actually a model of motherhood being presented, which is the responsible good mother being politically active and actually having a longer term and broader perspective. And I think, Holly, you were saying that that's something you've developed or trying to develop in your research.
Yeah, I certainly read that text as a way of constructing a new model of motherhood which reconciles the irreconcilable political and mother.
Actually, I have a question about, because I didn't read the text before, so I just read it very quickly now, and I can see that she was released in 1963, and what I wonder is whether we are still under Franco's regime, and I was wondering whether, because this person had been in prison, the sister and the children didn't want to have anything to do with her, not only because she left the children or because she was politically active when she went into prison, but because at that time you still didn't want to have anything to do with people who had been in prison, with people who were against the regime, because you may be seen as a family who were against Franco, yeah? And that was complicated. So I don't think it's only about motherhood and politics, it's also to do with the fear that the family
Of being guilty by association.
of being seen as leftists by association with the mother. So they have to reject her. She cannot be part of the family. That's, I don't know. Abigail?
Yeah,
Maybe
there were definitely sort of real threats to people's jobs and status in society if they were associated with the wrong side in those days.
So it's still quite early days. It started changing in the 1960s and 1970s, but it's still...
In other words, you could possibly imagine, against the grain reading of this text, where the sister who brought up the child might herself be a victim who's herself very frightened, rather than just a sort of evil person turning a child against her own mother.
Yeah.
Well, and if you do that, then you get to a very interesting point, coming back to what you said about the other two texts and family as performance, where the whole ways in which we perform our family roles, again, happen in inevitably political contexts where the first view may not be sufficient for various reasons.
Drawing on that, something I was thinking about is to what extent like a Butlerian model of performativity is applicable to the very notion of motherhood and more generically parenthood as roles.
Okay.
I was just thinking, following on this question of performance, that in the case of the lesbian mothers, after all, since time immemorial, there have been babies born into couples where the mother gives birth to a child and the person she's living with isn't the biological father of that child. And a woman in a heterosexual relationship who told her parents that the father, the husband, would have been considered heroic for accepting this child and being willing to bring it up as if it were his own. And so I was trying to ask myself, what's the difference between that situation and this one? And I suppose it's to do with pretense. It's that the father can pretend to be the father, the husband rather can pretend to be the father, whereas a woman can't. And so we come back to that whole question of performing parenthood and honesty and dishonesty and all those issues.
Yeah, and the related questions then of shame, which has been conceived in shame theory as a phenomenon to the sight. You're looked at and shamed, but you look like a Gore-Tex clothed family home heart, you can pass acceptably.
And the text by Kask is very, very eloquent about that, because she brings in the two most important narratives of our epoch, the Freudian Oedipal family situation, and Jesus being born out of a sham again.
And Joseph being a saint. And Joseph being considered a saint.
Yes.
Also a bit foolish. Isn't he sort of emasculated? Yeah, in her view, he's a sort of emasculated, which is problematic too.
Any more observations? Yes, Victoria.
To build on what you were saying, is perhaps another difference there actually is that in the examples where there's it's like the father kind of stepping in and pretending to be the father, it's one of the differences is that the child is already there, so there's a kind of narrative of rescue. So the child already exists and needs the father. Whereas actually one of the questions that I can't remember the author, but is raising is actually this is a wanted child that's kind of being created on purpose to not have a conventional family. So it's not that somebody's stepping in where a child has already
salvage
existed.
something, yeah.
It's actually on purpose trying to create a non.
This being against the norm from the start, purposefully, and very.
Yes,
That's very good point.
in terms of the performance of the piece, actually, Fanny's monologue in front of the parents when she's been silent throughout the kind of discussion, and then she actually bursts out almost, and that's how kind of I read it, and I imagined it as that. Ginny, I think we have to smash up categories, break down barriers, and chuck out redundant models. So it is a statement. She starts out, she's been quiet throughout, and obviously disappointed by the fact that these perfect parents are not actually so perfect after all. And then she starts out her monologue with a very clear statement about changing traditional, dominant, hegemonic norms. And then she goes on, we had several choices. We could have gone to Belgium, we could have adopted, but she wanted to carry the baby. And then we decided to do this. So it is, it's very much, it's an active choice, a choice that seeks to break away from what was the traditional. So, yeah.
I just have
Yes.
one question
Very
or
good.
one thing to say about, isn't this an excellent, we're talking about mothering and fathering and parenting. I think this is an excellent example of a context where it would be good to to let go of those terms and to just talk about parenting, then it wouldn't really,
But
it would help us at least.
yeah, but we were talking about it in our group about the different languages and whether we have a language with that. In Spanish, you don't have parenting.
And Swedish
You
neither.
have fathers, to be fathers. There's ser padres, to be fathers. There is not even to be mothers. You are fathers. So how can you have a language? We will have to make our own language, as you were saying. We'll have to make up.
But you mean you don't even have the word parent as a noun?
No, you have fathers.
Okay.
For mothers as well, for mothering.
Yeah. Somos padres, yeah? We are fathers.
We all fathers.
Yeah.
Claire, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just to say that the only place I think that these sorts of alternatives have been explored, including language and biological developments, is in science fiction. And unfortunately, I can't give you any examples of post-1968 European women writers who've written science fiction, but there are others like Marge Piercy and Ursula Le Guin who've got characters, or there are planets where there are characters who change sex depending on the season, so they can be male at one point and fertilise a female who may then become a male. There are those possibilities which only exist in the realm of science fiction.
In Marge Piercy was post-68, and Doris Lessing did a series of 5 science fiction, the Canopus series, but she embraces it a little bit less, although she does take the normative parenting roles and kind of challenge those a lot. But I think throughout Lessing's fiction, she does it a lot by having alien children, and by alien I mean from other families, or waifs and strays always coming through the mother's home, and that's how she kind of challenges this idea of performing the role of mother.
Well, definitely alternative science fiction by women in the 70s did propose alternative models even of societies where there were only women who then would share, different women would share mothering, so there would be the heart mother, the genetic mother, and lots of other mothers. But I think that we are getting now to literature that is giving us new visions and new possibilities, but within the realm of the world as we know it, rather than as a world that is still far away and scientifically very, very surreal or unreal. Maybe we have reached our time, haven't we? There's 1 minute. And if I just say, what is literature giving us? That was one of the questions we wanted to ask. Maybe, does any of you want to do that for me as a way of conclusion, or should I say something? Anybody would like to say something?
And maybe I'll just say that
Yes.
I'm sort of troubled by the distinction that's been made between literature and real life.
Yes.
It's coming up, and you seem to gesture towards that. Because all experience is mediated and narrativized, and that's how we make meaning, surely, and it's also how we experience affect, because it's how we, how we react to emotion, to how we figure out how we should react or might react to experience. And so I wondered as well, I mean, you talked about, Adalgisa, about the affective responses that seem to be prompted by the text we looked at, and the Cusk text really annoyed me. But also, I mean, I admire her writing, but it's her sort of sister. And so I don't know if that was something that maybe could be expanded, a kind of affective responses that literary text can provoke uniquely. Also literature can go back to temporality as well, these flashbacks and leitmotifs, stream of consciousness can provoke us to rethink temporality as well, which I think we should.
Very good.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then just sort of draw upon literature and real life. The way I've read literature is often in the context of the social and cultural context of understanding a particular time or place or relationship. and then using that within sort of sociological, social theory work. And I guess for me, one of the difficulties within the social sciences is that relationship between fact and fiction, if you like, and how as a sociologist I understand it and I try and portray it is that the narratives that we produce, the relationality that we have with others, is then reproduced in the narratives that we give, and that relationship between the social world and then the fiction is almost like the fiction is brought to life, and that is a struggle for actually quite a lot of social scientists to think that something that looks like a novel, for example, or narrated like fiction is not truth. And yet we read and are evoked by fiction as it is truth. And that I think that difficulty between understanding what is truth, as from a feminist point of view, is kind of like crucial in understanding how we think about our lives.
It's the methodology thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what constitutes evidence in different disciplines.
Yeah.
You know, you can go so far together and get certain things out. But,
and then it's like, you know, in the context of sometimes the SRC or REF, you then struggle, really.
I guess I suppose I think of fiction really as being, you know, so much more than just a reflection of real life, but it's reflecting on real life.
Yeah.
And also you've got...
And it's shaping it.
Shaping it. It's a space where you can pick up sort of anxieties and things that aren't expressed elsewhere. I mean, you mentioned that.
And sharpened up things that we can't see.
Things that
normally
you can't
we
say.
see them in literature. Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we're going to have coffee.